Hi guitarlings, this is Gray at Hub Guitar, here with a Celtic tune for you called The Green Mountain. So this tuning is in drop D. I'm in standard tuning now, which means that my low E string matches the pitch of my high E string, but I want my low E string to be a D, so I can play the 4th string D for a reference and tune it down to match. We're also in 4/4 time, but there are some triplets, so you want to be able to hear the triplet. So if this is the chord note, 1, 2, 3, 4, this is the 8th note, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and the chord note triplet will be da 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 1 2 3 1 2 3. So you want to hear all of those subdivisions against the quarter note in order to play them accurately. Now I've got a capo on the 2nd fret, which is optional, but that's how I'm going to do it today. Starting at the pickup, we've got a 3rd fret on the 2nd string. We're going to play that with really any finger, and then we can pull off to the open string, or just repluck, and then going straight to measure 1, we've got the D chord. So we've got open D, remember that's D now that we've tuned that, and we've got the 4th fret with our 3rd finger of our fretting hand, and then we've got our index finger on the 2nd fret. And you can play most of that measure just off of that chord shape. At the end we've got a little hammer from 2 to 4. Straight to the open D and another open D. And then on measure 2 we've got open D with open D to the 4th fret of the 4th string. And then on beat 2 of measure 2 we've got this triplet figure. So first you want to hear the timing. Da 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 da. That's important. And in order to execute that quickly, we're going to do a pull off and a hammer on. At beat 3 we go to the open A with the index on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, open B string, 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and open E string. For measure 3 we've got a B minor bar chord, so we're going to bar right across the whole fretboard and we're going to assemble a B minor chord. So if you don't know B minor, that looks like your A minor in the open position, but you move it up 2 frets and you bar across the 2nd fret. So I've got a bar across the 2nd fret, and I've got my ring finger on the 4th fret of the 4th string, although actually I'm not playing that string in this case. And I've got my pinky finger on the 4th fret of the next string, on the 3rd string, and I've got my index finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. We can play most of that just off of that one chord, except that we've got to lift up the pinky to get the 2nd fret note, and we get that from the bar shape. And the same thing here, we lift up the middle finger to the 2nd fret and put it back down. At the very end of the measure, we can open that up to the open E string. Measure 4 is pretty similar. And by pretty similar, I mean exactly the same. Now we're going to measure 5, which is a D chord. So you've probably played this D chord before, only now we've got that nice open E to accompany it on the 6th string. So I've got my middle finger on the 2nd fret of the high E string. I've got my ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and I've got my index finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. And I've got an open 6th string with that. Then I use my pinky to get to the 3rd fret and pull off to the 2nd fret. I go to the open string and I hammer back on. Then you've got to use your pinky at the end of measure 5 to reach for the 4th fret of the 3rd string. For measure 6, we go back to the chord that we started with, which is a D chord, open D and 1st finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, with a ring finger on the 4th fret of the 4th string. Measure 7, pretty similar to what we've encountered. Watch out for that triplet coming again. So open D and open D, 2nd fret of the 4th string, and then 4 2 4 is a triplet. Notice that for the 2nd half of measure 7, I'm doing my index finger on the 2nd fret, 3rd finger on the 4th fret, and then I'm doing the in-between finger, which is the middle finger, on the 3rd fret. By assigning each finger a fret, we get the job done much more smoothly. For measure 8, we go back to our B minor bar chord, except this time it ends with an open B string instead of an open E string. And And here at measure 9, we come to our cadence. So we're going to put our index finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, couple that with an open A string, 4th fret of the 4th string, 2nd fret of the 4th string. And there we've got a much faster slur. Now I've notated this as a 16th note triplet, but it's really just a bunch of notes really fast at that point when you see that on a score. And we follow that through with the D strings again for our cadence. Here's the first half all together. Starting on the second half, I've got a pickup note, open 1st string, 8th fret of the 2nd string. Then I put my ring finger on the 7th fret of the 2nd string and play that with the open D. Pinky goes back to 8, index, ring, and index. You can do that as a hammer-on and pull-off. That makes it a little smoother. Then we've got a little miniature chord forming, so we're going to put our 3rd finger, which is our ring finger, on the 7th fret of the 2nd string, and we're going to get our 2nd finger, which is our middle finger, on the 7th fret of the 3rd string. That way when you play those notes, they kind of blend together nicely. For measure 11, we're keeping those 2 fingers down on the 7th frets, and we're putting our index finger on the 5th fret of the high E string. So once we've done that, we can actually play through that whole measure without changing anything. It's just a big chord on measure 11. Now for measure 12, we're going back to the 5th fret, so we're going to put our index finger on the 5th fret of the 2nd string and play that with the open A, 7, 8, 5, 7, 5, 5, 7. So it's more of a single note melody coupled with an open string bass note. So try to make sure that the bass is still ringing. Even when I let go of the guitar, I can still hear that open A ringing, and that's what we want. We don't want to hear this. That melody starts to get a little bit lonely if the bass note disappears. On measure 13, we've got a triplet. And you can get that to happen pretty quickly by just doing a pull-off. So that's 8, 7, 5. So if you use pinky, ring, and index, you should be able to pull those all off to a nice triplet. Now we get to measure 14. Open D with the 7th fret, 8th fret, and 5th fret of the high E string. Notice that I'm keeping these notes down as long as I can. So that 7th fret note of measure 14, I actually never let go of. Even though it was preceded by an 8th fret note, I still am holding it down, because when I lift my finger up again, I can use it again. So that's a pretty useful thing to keep in mind. We just cycle our pinky under the 7th fret there for the last note. And I still keep my 3rd finger on the 7th fret because I'm going back to this little mini chord. So I've got my 3rd finger on the 7th fret of the 2nd string, and I put my 2nd finger on the 7th fret of the 3rd string. All of measure 15 can just be played as one big chord. For measure 16, we're going to an interesting B minor chord shape. So I've got my index finger on the 7th fret of the 2nd string, and I'm reaching with my ring finger onto the 9th fret of the big string. And then my pinky goes onto the 9th fret of the 4th string. And then after I've played those first couple of notes, I have to lift up my index finger for the open B string. And I put my index finger on the 7th fret of the 4th string, followed by the 9th fret. And here's the trick, I've got to reach down to 6 with my index finger to get to 7 and then open. So that's a little bit awkward and it may need some practice. Measure 17 is the same cadence that we used before in measure 9. Alright, so measures 16 and 17 are pretty difficult, so it would be fitting to practice them on loop until you've mastered them. Do that nice and slowly. The important thing is to plan your fingerings carefully. Alright, that's it for the Green Mountain. Thanks for watching.